Good afternoon, just after 4 o'clock on this Wednesday, second day in a row that temperatures are likely going to hold in the 60s, a little bit below normal for this time of the year, but really, I think a lot of people find it to be pretty comfortable. It was 69 yesterday. We're going to be somewhere in that 67, 68, 69 territory, I think, this afternoon when it's all said and done. Salem was also 69, by the way, back on Tuesday. Okay, real quick. So we don't have any pressing weather issues, right? It's dry out there. It's partly cloudy. It's really comfortable. Here is the latest this is good news, on a weakening Typhoon Mawar. And here is the satellite picture of the hurricane, still very well put together on the imagery. That's Taiwan. So the storm has turned north, sparing Taiwan, moving north away from the Philippines down here, and perhaps turning north fast enough that it's going to skip making landfall against some of these Japanese islands. So that's all good news. And maybe stay south of the Japanese mainland. So that's good news. Over here's the track. By the way, did you notice the winds? Barely at typhoon strength now, just 74 miles per hour. The storm is turning north. Typically, a northward turn takes you into colder water temperatures and continues a weakening pattern. But again, here's the mainland of Japan. Current track would take it north. Now, obviously, I'm sure Tokyo is still watching this track, but for right now, the news seems to be mostly good. And in terms of it might even spare some of these small Japanese islands south of the mainland island of Japan. But they will, I'm sure, be having warnings for a high tide and storm surge and all that. Remember, on a hurricane or a typhoon, the most destructive quadrant is the front right quadrant, if you will, kind of the northeast quadrant of the storm. So whenever you get on the backside, you're typically not seeing as heavy of rain. You're typically not seeing the worst of the winds either. So we will hope for the best. But there's certainly Okinawa, for example, is an island that this typhoon is going to be very close to. So, I mean, there are some areas not out of the woods yet. But in terms of certainly the larger areas of countries from Taiwan to Japan, it looks like those mainland areas will be spared a direct hit. So that's good news. And by the way, if you're Googling this Typhoon Mawar, you may come across a typhoon called Betty. It's the same storm. I know the Filipino meteorological organization is calling Mawar Betty, and they actually have both names in their language, so you know you're talking about the same storm, but that's kind of interesting. Okay. This afternoon, partly cloudy skies. Everybody is cleared out. All of our cameras show some sun, even up in Astoria, and it's clear down in parts of Lincoln County. Here's the Oregon Garden Resort camera out in Silverton. I love that Mount Angel, Silverton part of the valley. So pretty. The Oregon Garden's back in these trees here. And there's Elk Ridge Golf Course out in the gorge. The gorge has seen breezy winds. I noticed when I got up this morning, winds out in the Dalles were blowing northwest, gusting to 30. So it has been breezy out there, but otherwise partly cloudy skies, and temperatures generally are in the 60s to about 70 degrees. Okay, today, final day of May, right? And we talked about this, I think, the other day. So on this 31st day of May, today will become, at midnight tonight officially, the 16th consecutive dry day in May. That's the longest stretch of consecutive dry days with no rain, no moisture at all, that we've had since PDX started keeping records back in the early 1940s. So that will break the PDX record. The old record was a run of 15 days in the month of May. Again, these are month of May specific records back in 1995. And what I still think is the bigger story and the troubling story, it kind of goes hand in hand, but the fact that we're so quickly dry. Again, less than an inch of total rain for the month of May, 0.91 inches. Normal is 2.51, 36% of normal. The water year deficit, we had a water year surplus. So after the wet April and the decent winter and the good snowpack up on Mount Hood, after all of that, going all the way back to October 1st, the water year is now almost a half of an inch below normal at 32.29 inches. We'll keep track of this until September 30th. And again, the water, if we don't get another drop of moisture between now and September, which is highly unlikely, 32.29 would be below normal. It wouldn't be horrible, though. Little bit of rain expected over the next couple of weeks at most. So in other words, outlook's already hitting hard on June being drier than normal, which brings me to this map. Dry season already underway? Question mark, but it sure seems so. Total rain since May 9th, 3/100th of an inch of rain. So if our pattern doesn't turn around, we're going to look back at this year and say, you know what, the dry season started on the 9th or 10th day of May. And since then, we just haven't had much. That would be an early start to the dry season. That would prolong the dry season. And when you prolong the dry season, guess what happens? Your odds of having a bad fire season, or at least an active fire season, get better and better. Fingers are crossed, but this is not good news. June outlook. Less than an inch of rain seems to be what the models want. Normal is 1.63. And then keep in mind, a normal July is a half of an inch. A normal August is 54 hundredths. So if we don't get an inch of rain in June, and if we even get near normal rainfall in July and August, you realize on this 31st day of May, we're looking at a period of time of probably less than 2 inches of total rain here in the valley in any widespread areas, all the way into September. So yeah, the dry season is here. And by the way, a lot has been made about how our summers are getting hotter, right? I mean, if you go back, we've talked about this in detail. If you go back to the 1990s, it was normal that we would have about a dozen or 13 days of 90-plus degree heat in any particular year. That wasn't that long ago. If you do the average since 2000, you come up with a figure of 16 90-degree or better days throughout the summer season. You know, that's basically May into October. And if you go back even just a few years back to 2010, I think it is, you come up with an average that's closer to 20 days of 90-degree heat. So that's been well documented. What hasn't been as well documented is, along with these hot summers, the averages for precipitation are falling. So we reset these averages every 10 years. So the average of what we call normal now is the 30-year average up until the year 2000. So before 2000, in the 1990s, or excuse me, 2020 is what I meant to say. Before 2020, the normal July precip was 65 and hundredths. Now it's down to a half of an inch. The normal August precip was 67 hundredths. Now that's down to 54 100ths of an inch. And by the way, the normal June average was 1.70, and now that's down to 1.63. So keep in mind, not only a trend for hotter summers, but the precip numbers for summer are coming down as well. That's not a good recipe for fire season, right? So again, we keep our fingers crossed. It does. I do want to continue this dry theme with an update on the National Weather Service current drought status map, what they call the drought monitor. There's really only one area that's bad news. See, the yellows are abnormally dry, but not in a drought. So notice nearly all of Washington has been pulled out of drought status. That's great news. Nothing here in the west side of our state, here in Oregon, is in a drought status. Rather normal or considered still a little bit below normal, but not in drought. The bullseye is this darker color. The bullseye of the darker color is Crook County. That's Prineville, for example, where it's in a severe drought status. But this did have a little bit of a bullseye of exceptional drought, and then that was removed. And then for months and months and months back over the winter season, it was still considered to be extreme drought. So at least that's been downgraded to just severe drought. So that, while still dry and still in what's been a fairly lengthy drought, at least it's not, the situation has improved, is what I'm trying to say. But again, you get into the central eastern parts of the state, still a lot of folks really wishing for some precipitation. Okay, we talked about fire season a little bit. This is mainly for folks that are going to be spending time over in Central Oregon, or maybe you're watching this stream and you're over in Central Oregon right now. So this is 10 miles south of Bend. This is courtesy of KGW TV. This is their wildfire smoke model. This would be a smoke plume from a fire, and then this would be the smoke plume, the smoke spreading out to the east thanks to a westerly flow. There's a smaller blaze over here in Lane County in the Cascades. These two burns were started by the Deschutes National Forest. So in other words, they're controlled burns or prescribed burns as part of a management strategy. Now, they produce a lot of smoke, and you should know that that's what's going on, but they're not fires that were started accidentally or by Mother Nature. They were controlled burns. This one is that fire down in Klamath County. That was started back on May 20th by a lightning strike. They have a good handle on it. It has burned over 6,000 acres, but it's 60% contained. They believe they'll get this contained as early as the 5th day of June. So there you go. All right, 7-day forecast. Don't really need to get into the overall patterns of what's going on. It's pretty quiet weather, right? We're getting into that time of the year. So it could be some early cloudiness tomorrow, but tomorrow looks to be a lot sunnier than today has been overall on Thursday. Most of us will see light northwest winds to 15 miles per hour. A lot of you will be in the 40s. By the way, this morning, Hillsboro, 39. Kelso, 38. McMinnville, 38. These were low temperatures this morning. Salem, 45. Newport, 37. PDX dropped to 49. So we're definitely going to have at least some low 40s again overnight tonight. Going 48 in Portland. The added sun and the fact that the air mass is starting to warm a little bit, I have us getting up to 74. That would be pretty much normal for the first day of June. And then we stair-step a warm-up. Friday, a little bit warmer, 78. Saturday, a little bit warmer, 81. Sunday, a little bit warmer, 85. Again, these are lower numbers than what I had been showing you. And I just checked, obviously, before I'm doing this video. But I'm keeping Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday right now in the mid to upper 80s and not in the 90s. So the weather models that I looked at, the American models, the European models, they all agree that it's not going to reach 90 on Monday or Tuesday. Some of the models go, well, you get into midweek or maybe into Thursday of next week, and we're still going to have a little stretch of 90-degree heat. But there are signs that make you think that that's going to back off and not come true. So obviously I'm going 87 on Wednesday, getting close to 90. But for right now, it looks like we'll keep the lid on the heat somewhat as we go into next week. And that is your forecast. By the way, if you're wondering about my face, I don't know how bad it looks on this video. I have ongoing skin cancer issues. Nothing bad, just stuff that I have to keep on top of, and I do keep on top of it. I see my dermatologist every 6 months. I'm doing this, it's kind of like a chemo skin cream treatment right now that basically is like a chemical burn to wipe out some ongoing basal cells and that type of thing, and that's why my face is really red. Hope they'll start looking better next week. All right, thank you. I'll talk to you soon.